Disney Plus and Hulu better together in a brand new bundle.
Ready for an adventure?
The greatest stories ever told on Disney Plus with The Mandalorian and Disenchanted.
That's wicked.
Wicked good.
Critically acclaimed fan favorites on Hulu like Pam and Tommy and The Bear.
Let's take it up another level.
Save big when you bundle both for just $9.99 a month.
We're so good together.
All of these and more now streaming. Savings compared to regular monthly price of each service. 18 and over only. Access content from each service separately. Offer valid for eligible subscribers only. Terms apply. See DisneyBundle.com for details.
Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Conn Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're following on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. And don't forget, on Tuesday night, I'll do a live stream with Bram Weinstein, the voice of the Commanders, 7:30 Eastern Time. We're going to have a lot to talk about because we're going to talk with the players on Monday and we're going to talk with Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew on Tuesday. So there's going to be a lot to discuss Tuesday night. Join us there. We're going to look ahead to the offseason, et cetera. Right here, you know who this is. It's Nicki Jhabvala from the Washington Post. We're going to wrap up. I don't even know we're going to wrap up the final day because the game doesn't really matter. And as I predicted in my prediction on Friday, that Washington would win easily because I predicted that. Whatever I said on there, don't believe it. I did predict it. Nicki heard me. I think you heard me say that.
Sure, yeah.
So,
I predicted the same thing for what it's
worth.
worth.
Anyways, but we're going to talk about Sam Howell, but it's also some bigger topic issues to get into. And I want to start with there, Nicki, because the biggest story is ownership.
Sure.
Was this the last game for Dan Snyder as owner?
Yeah.
Now, I know you had a chance to go around and talking to fans. What was their reaction before the game?
Yeah, I was a little surprised because I got some mixed reactions. There are some fans who were like, the grass is not always greener. The uncertainty gives us a little pause. And, a lot of fans spoke highly of Tanya Snyder and the charitable effort she's made and, how fan friendly she is. But there were definitely some who were like, yes, we've been waiting for this moment. Can't wait. Praise God. That literally that type of thing where, the changing of the guard, so to speak, is something they really never thought would happen. It seems to be coming to fruition. Maybe we'll see this offseason.
And as we know, Dan Snyder was not in attendance today. I think that's at least 2 of the last 3 games that he missed here. Yeah. Did you expect a little bit more of a scene even during the game or at some point late in the game from fans or anything like that?
Not really. I think a lot of it was because of the flow of the game too. I mean, they were crushing the Cowboys, so they had very little to be upset about, just with the game stuff. In fact, it kind of felt like more of a celebration throughout the stadium, even pregame. I mean, they had concerts, fans were dancing, Cowboys fans too. The usual tailgating. Of course, the Sonny Jurgensen tribute, which I thought was really well done. So there were more moments of celebration, honestly, even though they're out of the playoffs. And I think a lot of it is because they were winning. Sam Howell gives a little bit of hope. The possible exit of Dan Snyder gives a little bit of hope. So, and
for the timeline here, we are kind of looking at like the earliest anything would get approved would be late March at the owners meeting. So, but there's a good chance we'll hear something before then about who may be the likely owner, but there's just so much uncertainty with this. Like, what do you think is the biggest uncertainty with this? I mean, you've got coaches, we got all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say ownership is number one because you never know what a new owner will do when, he or she comes in. I think timing wise, I think Ron Rivera, he gets another year. Just because a new owner won't be, like you said, won't be in place until late March at the earliest. And by then the firing cycle for head coaches is well over with. You can't redo after that point. But I do think Ron is going to have to make some significant changes to his staff and will make changes. The first person I look at is Scott Turner, the offensive coordinator. Obviously there's some frustration with the play calling across the board, fans, players alike. So I think he could be gone. We'll see. And possibly some other positional coaches as well. He's got to do something to kind of jumpstart things. Right.
I mean, if you make a change at offensive coordinator, you're probably going to make some more to the offensive staff because whoever comes in would be more likely to bring their own people. And it does sound like the couple things we don't know with that is what kind of authority is there to make a change? Yeah. And when can you make that change? Right. Because until Ron Rivera meets with Dan Snyder, I don't know that he can just go summarily do anything. I don't know. It does sound like this could be, I'd say sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
I don't think anything with Scott Turner is going to drag on.
Right.
And I do think today was a big day for him. How they view it, I don't know, but I do think it was a big day for him. But you bring up the frustration, and I think was interesting because I know the Washington Post had the story about that. You know, we both talked to people about the frustration, and it was kind of interesting that it was starting to come out last week.
Right.
Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I mean, to have losses the way they have, and honestly, it started over the last few weeks, when they've had, the 3 losses and a tie, and that basically derailed their season. So, yeah, guys have been frustrated for quite some time. So yeah, we heard more of that definitely this past week, that, the loss to Cleveland that officially eliminated their chance at a playoffs hopes, in conjunction with the Green Bay win. And guys have been pretty vocal about it.
They were. And I think last week it kind of comes to a head because they were eliminated.
Yeah.
So I think there's been frustration. You've heard it.
Yeah.
There's been grumbling throughout. Last week is a little bit more where I think they're a little bit more willing to share a little bit more of those frustrations, why there were frustrations. Right. And so sometimes it's hard to report all that or even express a lot of that until you know a little bit more. And how widespread is it?
Right.
And you always have to take into account one thing we know at this time of year, what happens anytime you start to lose, the fingers start going. Right. And so you always have to take that into account. But there was more widespread frustration, I think, with this one. And to me, and you can tell me what you've heard too, what one thing you hear is wanted better teaching.
Right.
Better teaching. I talked to somebody outside here who felt like they call the series of plays, not an offense necessarily.
Right.
Where's the identity on offense? Right. Why would it take so long to get McLaurin the ball at times? So those are some of the things you hear. In a nutshell, what are some of the things you were hearing?
Yeah, a lot of it is predictability. Yeah. Players feel like, the opposing defenses knew what they were going to run a lot of times, not enough disguise there. A lot of times they felt like they found something that worked and then would immediately move away from that. Like they got in a good rhythm with Brian Robinson and then suddenly just moved away from it with and I don't mean to put this on Curtis Samuel, but for example, just, pitching the ball to Curtis Samuel on a random play and losing
in the red zone.
Right. And losing yardage, losing momentum, running the ball, getting up to midfield, which is not an easy task, especially for this team, it feels like, and then randomly running a trick play at midfield, which they've done quite a bit, or taking an unnecessary shot, which, you want to take deep shots, but you got to be mindful of the risks too. So a lot of those types of frustrations, and losing, like you said, it brings it out of players.
It always brings it out.
And I thought the simplest one is the most obvious. They feel like they have too much talent on this team to be scoring only 10 points or however many they've been scoring. Like they have too much talent. And I think this year, especially, probably couldn't argue it in 2020, but this year with that receiving core, their backs, their tight ends who were not involved very much this season. Yeah, I think it's reasonable to argue that they have talent. They
do. And it's funny because, again, I was talking to somebody who their point was, while they have talent, does the talent always match what they want to do and the style they want to do it? So while you have these good parts here, does it match the parts over here? Right. Does it match what Brian Robinson runs best? So there's so that's coming from outside the organization more so than inside. But I do think there was definitely frustration. And I think it's going to be for Ron Rivera has to decide. And one thing we know he does is he will talk to team leaders. So I'll be curious to see what comes out. I was talking to someone player, because he met with a lot of the team leaders over the last couple of weeks. I asked somebody, was that part of the discussion? It's no, it's just all about the quarterbacks, but they do have exit meetings. Yeah. So I'm going to guarantee that this stuff is going to come up there. Don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And here's the thing is that it's not all on Scott. Right. I mean, how many quarterbacks did he deal with?
8.
Yeah. I mean, there are a number of injuries. All the teams face injuries. It's not all on him. There have been issues with communication, issues with just pure execution by the players too. So it's not all on Scott, but I think a lot of the overall management of the offense has caused reasons for gripes. And there is room for change there for sure.
Well, I think at the end of the day, I don't know why I don't like that phrase, but at the end of the day,
Yeah.
we know that there's frustration.
Yeah.
So you wonder, what does that mean?
Right.
Is it going to improve? Can you sit, is there going to be, did Ron Rivera see growth in him as a play caller at all? I think the other factor is Ron Rivera coached for his dad in San Diego. And after he got let go from Chicago, and Norv Turner coached with Rivera in Carolina. So there are some deep ties there. But I think at this point, whatever you just, if you want to make move, the only question you have to ask is what's best for the organization going forward. And, I don't know. I think, and we clearly, again, Nicki's right. It's not all on anybody. I would get comments in there sometimes like the offensive line sucks, the quarterback sucks, fire the coordinator.
Right.
Well, you can't have it all. But I think the hard part is what you have to look at is not just 1 year. It's, what have you thought over the 3 years?
Right.
Have you seen the kind of growth as a play caller that you need to see? And when one player said something about like, well, I want it to be taught better. I said, well, after this much time, what do you think the chances of that happening are? And that, you want to do better teaching. So like, if that's what it is, then you either are or you're not. And so that's one thing I think that we'll be curious to see how much does that get taken into consideration?
And then also, and this is again, something other teams face as well, is that system is what it is. It's predicated on explosive plays. You got to have the right personnel. And if you don't have the right personnel, you got to find some way to tweak it. And it didn't feel like they did that. And that's a hard thing to do when you got quarterbacks rotating in and out. But I think they have to find something that's more quarterback friendly, more tailored to their personnel, for them to have a real chance, because it felt a lot of times like they were trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Peloton doesn't just make bikes. They also make treadmills and rowers. With Peloton, you can do a quick ride on the bike, a power walk on the tread, or a full body boot camp on the row. So it doesn't matter if you exercise daily or you're new to working out. Peloton can help you achieve your fitness goals. Try Peloton bikes, tread, or row, risk-free with a 30-day home trial. New members only, not available in remote locations. See additional terms at onepeloton.com/home-trial.
The NFL playoff picture is locked in, and my go-to place for wild card round action is DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. To kick off the road to Super Bowl 57, new customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in free bets instantly. Plus, all new and existing customers can get a no-sweat bet each day of the wild card round this weekend. Just place an NFL bet of your choice, and if it loses, you'll get a free bet back up to $10. Action's so good, why bet the NFL playoffs anywhere else? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code KEIM, K-E-I-M. New customers can bet $5 on the NFL and get $200 in free bets instantly only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code KEIM. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details.
Well, and that's where you go back to, then we start looking at roster construction, and the way the line was built, to me, was a problem. And then, I certainly think losing Robinson early was an issue, but because they never found their identity. It took them a while. So I think there were some other issues with that, and the quarterback play needed to be better. But when you go out and you watch Brock Purdy do what he's doing in San Francisco, and you see some other teams like Pittsburgh was won games with Kenny Pickett. I mean, so like you can compensate. So how do you get there? And if you're calling the right plays doing this, like sometimes you just don't have the talent. I remember going back in the day when Kyle Shanahan was here, and it was 2011. And I remember there were a lot of fans who wanted him run out of town. But his offense, you could see that it worked. You could see the cohesion with it. And when you talk to players, you would hear that from them. So that's to me is what I think Rivera is going to have to take into, whatever decision he makes. If you think, did you see signs of growth? Do you feel like you're on that so-called same page? Because sometimes I wonder about that too, Nicki. Are they on that same page? Because Rivera wants to be a power run inside team. And there are times with Scott, that he wants a more vertical passing attack on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And going back to the offensive line, I think so many times at least for me, I was watching the team and, they love going empty, and I'm thinking you can't protect an empty, but going back to even last season, I think one of the more egregious moves of this team, and, everything's clear in hindsight. And they had to part with Brandon Sheriff. They just couldn't afford him. Eric Flowers you know,
And he turned down multiple offers.
Exactly. And Eric Flowers had a good year, but they had to make salary cuts, and it's not like he signed anywhere else. But to think that Andrew Norwell and Trey Turner at this point in their career would be serviceable replacements is just, that really hurt. Yeah.
And that was something we've talked about for a long time.
Yeah. And then I think, a lot of us underestimated the impact of the injuries at center. I mean, it's been the second year in a row where they've lost that many centers, but, having a reliable, consistent person there, which Chase Roulier is when he's healthy.
Tyler Larson too, when he's healthy.
Tyler Larson too, and to lose both of them was really tough.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be. I believe it'll be a priority. Mm-hmm. Last year I said linebacker be a priority because that's what you heard, and then they settled on Holcomb and Davis, and that's fine. But I do think, I do know that line is a priority, and so it has to be, and I'd be shocked if you don't. Whether it's free agency, whether it's a draft, and then it's a matter of, do you think Roulier or Larson will be healthy? If so, who are you keeping?
Right.
Because, and I think then, I think they feel good that Schweitzer got through healthy. Then I think they're going to strongly consider putting Cosme at guard. So then, but you still have to fix that line.
Exactly. I think one of the positive things to come out of this season, I'm just going to segue for you since you're not doing it yourself. I think one of the positive things really is the secondary. I really am bullish on that group because it's composed of mostly young guys. I think Kendall Fuller had an outstanding season. I mean, he capped it off with a heck of a game here. And to have young corner like Benjamin St. Juste, I think their safeties, I really like their safeties group. We'll see what they do with Bobby McCain, but Derek Forrest really coming into his own. I think Percy Butler has a good future. And of course, Cam Curl, I mean, having him back there. So I think their secondary could become kind of the star of this team outside of their defensive line, depending on what they do there, obviously with Deron Payne. But I think that was a high point of this season, just seeing that group really develop and come into its own.
Yeah, I agree. I do think they need to go get another corner. Yeah. Absolutely. I think you need to get a physical corner who's got some size. St. Juste does a great job defending the pass. I think his run D is that's where it's but that's okay. He's really good defending the pass. He's good at that, and he's he'll come up and all that. But I love a Patrick back there. Yes, but I think I like what they're building there. But again, especially corner depth, you need linebacker depth. I think you need now. Khaleke Hudson had a terrific game today, and that was nice to see. And I will say, because he had a tough week with Devon Hamlin, with the issue that's a close friend of his, like you said. So good to see him go out in a game like that in a week like this, he was playing for something more. And so that's cool to see, but they're still going to need to address that spot to get there. But I think what we have to get to now, because it's what the one reason we wanted to watch today was the quarterback and Sam Howell. What did you take away from today for him?
I thought he was impressive. I don't think I think he looked a lot like a rookie, and I don't mean that in a negative sense, but it's his first game. There are going to be mistakes, the interception into triple coverage in the end zone. That was the most prominent one. But you look at that 52-yard throw. I mean, I think somebody said it on Twitter that, that is a throw that Taylor Heineke can't make, and a one that Carson Wentz will miss. And that's what you get. It's honest. It's true. I don't think one game can predict a whole future with Heineke though.
No, Canton. This is Canton Bob.
But it can kind of give you that glimpse, and it could solidify his place, as the starter or the backup, depending on what happens. So I think
he was an intriguing player to me going into this, and I was intrigued to see him going next year, see where he's developed. The couple things that I really liked that I saw from him today, you brought the 52-yard pass. I love the fact that he looks off the safety. Then the safety doesn't necessarily move, but he holds the safety because he's looking to his left, holds the safety. And the safety doesn't bite hard. Look, when he looks left, but he's got the arm to get it down there on a rope, and the safety doesn't make the play. So it was a beautiful throw, but I just liked his process on that play. The other throw, there's two other things. The other throw I really liked was the one to Jahan Dotson, the 22-yarder. And I liked it two reasons. One, I thought Dotson made a terrific move on that. He creates separation. But so he creates about 1.5 yards, 2 yard separation. But what gave him the ability to turn and run was the throw. Yeah. The throw is on the outside. He puts it away from the defensive back and takes him into that run. He does not get that, with some of the, I don't think anybody else is getting that. So for a variety of reasons, but I think like that. And then the runs, and I loved the run. The mobility was big, and it wasn't just that he ran the ball. I felt like his vision was really good too. And even on the touchdown, the cut, it was a plant and cut. Like you don't see that, but that was just there. He plays with that. I don't know if it's swagger with it or if it's just
moxie. Yeah. It's a bit of Heineke moxie. And I think there are parallels between this game and that Tampa Bay playoff game with Heineke. They're different players, no doubt. But I think that mobility is key. And, going into last offseason when they traded for Wentz, I just, nothing against Wentz personally, but the fact that they went after a pure pocket passer because he doesn't have the mobility he had in 2017 just doesn't make sense in this day and age in the NFL anymore. You got to have that dual threat guy right now. Could always turn back, but I just feel like it's so necessary, and it helps the offensive line so much. And the offensive line, they're like, they impressed him.
Yeah, and I think even there's a lot of stuff that we're not going to know about how some of the intricacies of it, but like he even blamed himself for a couple of those sacks. Sometimes it could be the depth of your drops, etc. But I felt like the other thing is he certainly was not overwhelmed. I mean, we heard for a long time, like, well, he's not ready. He's not ready. Right. He did not look overwhelmed. And like he had any nerves. No, he didn't. And the couple of things I heard I asked one person with the staff, like, what'd you think? Consistency and mental toughness. So like, they felt like he just handled things well. He throws the interception, doesn't let him get him down. He goes back out there. Huge. Yeah, that was huge. And so there's a lot of those little things that's like, okay, can you build on this? Right.
You think about the defense he's going up against in a game that matters for them, but doesn't necessarily matter for his team. Like,
his guys. He didn't have.
This was a tough game. This is a really tough game, and he stepped in, didn't look rattled, and did his thing. So yeah, you got to give him credit there. And what I liked is he had his rookie moments, I'd say. But he didn't look reckless. No. It wasn't a cocky, overly confident.
It didn't look like Dak Prescott today.
Correct.
Seriously.
I know.
Dak looked terrible.
Yeah, no, he was definitely the better quarterback out there, hands down.
Yeah, and it's funny. So I don't know. You can't change your approach based on one game. Right. I don't think for the offseason, but I think you can be encouraged by, hey, if nothing else, this guy can do maybe X. Right. If you can develop that. Because they do think he's smart, and all that. So, but what do you think? We're so far from all this stuff. Right. How much does it alter? I mean, we talked to Taylor afterwards too. Taylor's a free agent. So, how much does this alter anything, you think?
I think it alters anything in that, they know that he can step in and hold his own in a game. And yes, it's just one game. You don't know what that means for consistency's sake because you only have a small sample size. But he showed enough to intrigue. And I think that intrigue is enough to help him at least become a backup next season, which is a big step from a kid that was, third string and never got into the game until this week. And I think it could have more serious implications for Taylor Heineke. I mean, he certainly seemed to view this game as his last, given his emotion walking off the field. I'm sure there's some interest in keeping him, but a lot of that is dependent on Sam Howell. Do they view him as a backup? Does Taylor have other options? Does he have a starting option? What will the money be? And I don't know that there would be as many options if there weren't Sam Howell. If he didn't have the game he did, I think there'd be much more stronger interest.
Right, absolutely. And I think for Taylor, it's going to depend what role do they see from here. Right. Also, what's the plan? Because are you, like, hey, we'd like to have you, and then we're going to go get another quarterback or draft a guy. Then like, okay, you're going to draft someone, what round? Right. Then that depends. I think that all factors into his decision as well. And I don't blame him, but I also think I think this place obviously is going to mean something to him. This is why he kind of walked off the field the way he did and why he was talking to us afterwards about that. So he definitely is going to mean something to him. We did not talk to Carson Wentz afterwards. Hopefully we talk to him on Monday to get his thoughts on what, clearly he's not going to be here. So be interesting time here, Nicki. And I guess the last thing too is, does this, what does this win do? I mean, to the point too, and I think the other thing that needs to be pointed out, like that defensive line, you're missing John Allen. Right. They played really well. The linebackers are just backups. They played really well. Right. It was fun to see. Percy Butler had a couple plays where he's flying around, making a couple tackles out and for a loss. So like, there were some, I guess for them, some energetic, fun things to watch. And it's kind of like, well,
And that's where I feel like it could have the biggest impact, is that year 1 to year 2 for a lot of these younger guys is just building that confidence. I mean, you look at year 1 to year 2 for guys like Derek Forrest, Benjamin St. Juste, that could have a huge difference. And they too played sparingly in their first year. So to get this kind of confidence, roll it into next season, it's not the same as like an in-game momentum, but to know that they belong out there, they can make these plays, I think is huge. It's huge for depth. It's huge for future starter talent. And hopefully they can build on it. There's so much uncertainty going into this offseason, more than I feel like there ever has been, even though they kind of laid the foundation with a lot of young players.
Right. Absolutely. And it wasn't 7 wins.
Right.
So it was 8 wins. Right. So there you go.
We're not,
Go crazy, folks. Yeah. So anyways, that's it from FedEx Field for the last time this season. Thanks to Nicki for joining me. And Nicki, tell them where they can find you.
On Twitter at Nicki Jhabvala or at WashingtonPost.com/sports.
There you go. Thanks for joining me. Again, thanks, Nicki. And again, Tuesday night, 7:30 Eastern time with the Voice of the Commanders, the live stream show. Join us there. Bring your questions. There's a lot going to happen this offseason and lots going to be talked about over the next couple of days. Join us there, and I'll talk to you next time.